Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Racing Line, the Formula One podcast by fans, for fans. I've often thought about changing that tagline up. We're going to have to work on that one, but that's not what we're talking about today. We are talking about the wonderful weekend we had in Melbourne at the Australian Grand Prix. That's right, Tristan and I were on the ground. If you haven't listened to any of our episodes, I highly recommend you head back and have a listen to those. As we're just talking, the Thursday one was recorded inside the car while we're travelling on the highway, so I highly recommend listening to that one in the car. It just sounds like you're in the car with us.
With us?
Yep, but I had lots of really fantastic feedback from the other episodes. But yeah, go and have a listen, because we tried to give as many little insights as we could into what our weekend looked like in those episodes. And this is going to be a little bit more of a traditional race weekend podcast.
Business as usual.
But with a few little extra sparkles of happiness. We were, as I was just mentioned, really, really lucky to be in the paddock with media passes, in the pit lane as often as possible, in the media centre, in press conferences, all those wonderful little spots that we get to on the other side of the Melbourne Walk. And we need to start the episode by saying a huge thank you to the Australian Grand Prix Corporation, Tristan.
Yes, absolutely.
They were incredibly accommodating and incredibly friendly. They're really helpful, and they certainly helped us out. And this is by no means a paid presentation. It is simply a showing of our gratitude, because we certainly do appreciate it. We get up at all sorts of hours to watch and record podcasts, and so it was really lovely to get that recognition for our hard work and to be there. And it was an incredible experience as we're talking to absolute ultimate Formula One fans. They know exactly how wonderful our experience was, because it was a really wonderful experience. And so we're going to try and share as much of that, but break down the weekend and break down the racing as best we can. And there are plenty of talking points.
So much to go through, even outside of the race itself. We had 48, 100 plus hours at Albert Park. 4 days in a row. I could do 10 episodes today. It's so much to talk about. But anyway, I'm sure we'll drip feed it through our socials as well throughout the week. And lots of things to talk about. And if you have a question just based on the weekend, maybe just get in touch with us.
Hit us up.
Just a personal question or a wondering, and we'll happily share with you our experiences and answer it, I guess, as best we can.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got all the usuals. We do have all the usuals.
Good.
But as always, we do start with an opening question, and that comes from Paige. Good old Paige. She's come through the goods. Her opening question idea, so not even, it's just a formalised idea, I guess. Mm-hmm. What Aussie theme would you like to see brought to the track? Miami have their fake beaches, and Hungary have the giant bull statue. What should Albert Park have? I reckon they should have a couple of jumping pillows, just like what we do at Havoc caravan parks. Now, caravan parks don't exist all around the world.
Jumping pillows. Think about that for a second.
Yes. So caravan parks are where I don't know what everyone else calls them. Caravans in UK, but I don't know if caravans exist in America.
I guess you'd call them, would they be trailer parks?
Oh, possibly. Trailer parks might be the way. For holidays and things like that.
Yeah, like a little holiday.
And in Australia, and I don't know if this is the case around the world, they traditionally, they used to be quite bland, boring places, but in the last sort of 20 years, they've really been pumped up, and there's jumping pillows for kids and playgrounds and water slides and little go-karts and all sorts of wonderful things. I assume they have them in England. I don't know.
I assume so. You're probably more versed in this than I am, because my idea of caravanning is staying at home.
Yeah. You're not a caravanner.
And not doing it.
But it is a very Australian thing. And then,
it is.
And then just to make it even more Australian, she wants to put them in the shape of a thong. Now, I think Australia already has its thing, and that's the Melbourne Walk.
Yeah, I think so too.
But it's not the cringy thing that she's looking for. She wants some cringy Australian. And I think I actually saw the cringy Australian on the way in on the first day.
Did you really?
Yep, and it was beautiful. Not cringy at all, actually.
I'm just trying to think
really
what it was on the way in.
We had the Lions barbecue fundraiser.
Oh, that's right.
On the way in,
too.
so we pull into
an
international Formula One race,
global event.
We're pulling into the car park inside the venue, and on our walk across to the media centre, and we managed to walk through a Lions barbecue.
Club.
Which is, if for people around the world, once again, because we do have lots of international listeners from all over the place. a Lions barbecue in Australia consists of a couple of barbecues set up, mass sausages.
Massive.
And these aren't big English Cumberland sausages. These aren't hot dogs.
These are your $4.50 supermarket pack of 12.
Very, very sort of plain but delicious sausages.
Literally the best.
Yep. And they're in just bread, and no, we don't call it a sausage sandwich. It's just a snag in bread.
It's just bread.
And it's called a snag.
Yeah.
And it's an actual tradition that if you go to the hardware store in Australia called Bunnings, that you pretty much can't walk in the joint or out of the joint without buying a sausage and bread, because that's the fundraiser there.
Yep.
And it's the traditional fundraiser. So if anyone wants
when
to
you're
put
voting too, known as a democracy sausage.
Yep, that's right.
You vote, you go down, you have a snag after you vote.
So if you want to go anywhere and you want it to be anything like a proper Australian situation, you got a Lions Club, which is like the men's, traditionally men's, but there's definitely women in there now. But it's the club that does things around the community.
Is Lions Club global? I think it might be.
Couldn't tell you.
I reckon it would be. I reckon there'd be people listening right now going, we've got that.
They're just cooking up sausages and bread, and it's simple. There's sometimes some cooked onion that goes on there, and some sauce, and you're off. And it was wonderful. So I would just plant them all over the joint so that the whole place smells like barbecue.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking American barbecue. It's just simple sausage barbecue.
Regular, good.
The whole joint smells like barbecue, and you can just go and pick up the quick snack. It's not generally for your lunch. Like for your proper lunch, you're going to get the nice pizza. Like I had a beautiful pizza. You had a really nice hamburger.
Yeah. I've been guilty of having just a snag in bread for lunch.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it just alleviates the little hungers that you might have at the Formula One race, and so
I like it.
Yeah, that's what I'd be doing. What would you do?
Jeez, I'm just trying to think of something that I do outside of that. I actually really think I kind of agree with you there. I can't think of anything else that would be
I agree with
really
you on opening questions all the time.
Yeah, like really iconic Australia. I like that.
Right, the next question I've got to get it's kicked off, and this one comes from Watsy. Our man Watsy. I've been speaking to the man. He was nearly on for an episode, and then the cold got him.
Ooh.
I've got a feeling it didn't help that he's been travelling hours and hours for work lately, and it's causing him some dramas. But he said to me, and it stumped me for a little while, and I eventually came to it. But what was your major takeaway this year? So in the past, we've had major takeaways from our experience within the race weekend. What was your major takeaway?
Major takeaway
that you didn't have that understanding of before you entered this weekend, and now this is our fourth time in the paddock, so we have some experience. One was cut really short with COVID.
Yep.
We've had two other occasions where we've spent the 4 days flat out in the paddock, pretty much. So we're starting to feel like regulars at the Australian Grand Prix, as crazy as that sounds.
Yep.
And so probably the first year, everything was a takeaway.
Yes.
The second year, there was sort of on and off bits and pieces. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is a bit different. And we're starting to make comparisons between the two big events.
Yep.
This one, what was your major takeaway this time?
It was a major... probably the one thing that I really took away from the Grand Prix was that there is a real generational changeover from fans.
Good.
And that was really, really evident across the weekend.
Yep.
And it's probably something that I haven't really given too much thought about, but I don't think I've seen it on such a scale that we saw at the Grand Prix. I think that we were just shy of 500,000 people across the 4 days, and I think I read today it's the most attended Grand Prix of all time.
Really?
I'll double check that.
Silverstone?
Even something like Silverstone, it was the most attended, and it's just... It was huge, and I think I even got that vibe when we were there as well. It was another level on last year when we were there, and I really, really noticed it. But, I mean, we talk about the Netflix generational fans that are coming through, and they're there.
And I really don't want that to be a derogatory term.
No, me neither. No, because it's the thing that...
It's fine. It's
what's
great.
Caught their attention.
I love that people are keen on Formula One, and I don't have a problem with them being at that level.
No, I think it's good enough to think about, like, what caught my attention when I was watching it many, many years ago. It was when it was on in the middle of the afternoon.
Yep.
And for us, that's just what it was on telly. So I guess this is sort of their version, but there really is. There is a real changeover of fans at the moment, and we don't have as many of the old school fans I mean,
they're still there.
They're there.
It's just they're not there en masse in your face the whole
that's
time,
exactly right. Whereas our new generation of fans, they're there in large capacity.
Yep.
And they're in your face all the time. And again, not in a bad way.
Yeah, that's right. Like, on social media,
yes.
they're
real
on
proactive.
The Melbourne walk and are willing to wait around for ages and ages. And there's certainly some traditional fans in there as well. But it is, and at one stage we turned up, and the stage, whoever was on stage, I don't think it was Gunter Steiner at that point, because Gunter was on a bit later on, and he has a huge following.
There's a massive amount of people there.
But we decided we're not walking that way because there's too much to get through.
Yes, yeah.
And there would have been thousands and thousands and thousands
we left
of people
Sunday at,
that.
8 o'clock, 8:30, something like that.
Yep.
Lights in the paddock were actually going off.
Yep.
Drivers and team bosses had already well left.
Yep.
And we made our way out, and the Melbourne walk, as lights were turning off and, infrastructure was coming down, there was still 4 deep.
Yep.
Just trying to get a glimpse of anyone on the way. And I think that sort of, when I say they're in your face, that's what I mean. They're there, and they're proactive, and they are incredibly passionate, but it's a different level of passion, isn't it? To like your old school fan, or like for us, I see us now as like that middle tier fan.
Yep.
We're not super old school.
Yep.
But we're not quite the Netflix.
Yeah. Well, we didn't live properly the Senna days.
No, that's right. We know of it, and we're aware of it.
We love it.
And we love it. Yes, you're right. But we didn't live it. Yep. We lived,
I have a great deal of jealousy in my life that I didn't live. I didn't understand what was going on in the Senna Prost days and before then, the Hunt and so it's just I'm 100% with you, and it is out there, and if anyone's in doubt, Formula One is kicking goals.
It is alive and kicking, isn't it?
Yep. I've been waiting for the Netflix Drive to Survive thing to peter off, and I don't know that it will. I feel like it's captured fans.
Yep.
And the now fans,
and it's probably keeping fans as well too.
Yeah. I tend to agree, and I don't know whether Drive to Survive is pulling in as many new fans as what it was in the first 3 or 4 years.
No,
or 2 years or whatever it was.
Yep.
But I feel like it's certainly not seeing fans disappear.
Nah, not at all.
And that talks about what a tremendous sport it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
It talks volumes for that sport, and so. Yeah, no, I like that takeaway. My takeaway is my major takeaway in the end was that Dan Ricciardo isn't finished in Formula One.
Oh, absolutely not. You're right.
And like that was certainly a lingering worry I had in my head.
Yep.
Before I went to that weekend, but there is the excitement around the fact that Dan Ricciardo will be available to teams next year is massive. I feel like there's a great deal of love for him at Red Bull at the moment, and going into the weekend, I didn't think that was where he was going to be going.
No.
I was sure, I think we talked about it, I was sure he was going to go to Sauber or something like that. I'm very, very certain that we're not going to lose Dan Ricciardo.
No, me neither. He was incredibly popular. He was really great with all the fans. We talked about it on our other episodes across the weekend. He was flanked by security and just people, and did a lot of the promo stuff, which was good. Not that Max and Checo didn't do it, but he went above and beyond, I felt.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the race weekend.
Which is pretty much his job. And
right,
everyone's going to talk him up while they're in Australia, but it is genuine excitement about the fact that there is a fantastic driver ready to go.
Yep, well, he's got 8 races. We listened to that over the weekend. He's got 8 that he's booked in for that he will be a part of.
Yep, absolutely. So they're probably the major takeaways from the race weekend. And then the other major takeaway for me was that COVID's dead. It was so busy everywhere.
Yeah, it was.
And it wasn't considered at any point COVID.
No.
And it was a beautiful thing considering that...
Didn't hear about it.
No. Considering that the last time... Well, one of the times when COVID hit while we were there.
Yes.
And it sort of hit Australia in a major way that weekend. And that was probably the first major event to get cancelled because of COVID.
Yep.
And then the next one, though, everyone's a bit tentative. The next time we could come back a couple of years later. But this time, no signs of it. It was in full scale, and Formula One was in full swing. And it was, it was a beautiful thing.
Yep.
Rightio, let's get into the race review now, because we have talked about qualifying.
Yes,
We're
we
not
have.
Going to go
Don't need to go in there. Yep,
things.
Absolutely.
We've put out plenty of episodes. Go and catch up on them. I think you'll take something out of it. I don't think there's something that's sort of like time stamped where it's gonna be outdated. I think you'll get something out of it. So go back and check those ones out. And like I said, make sure you're driving for the first one. What was your initial... Well, let's get a race ranking, actually.
Okay, race ranking. Oh, jeez. I'm going to go with a 9.
Your second 9 of the year.
It is second 9. It was, without a doubt, the best Australian Grand Prix that I have seen. I can't think of another year that would outrank it.
Some of the very early ones, there were some spectacular races.
There was, but I would say this had...
What about the year where they came 5th in a?
Yeah, no. This had everything.
Yeah,
everything.
It was a beauty.
The only thing it was missing was an Alonso win.
I'm not going.
That would have been
I'm
a 10.
not going a full 9.
All right, I'm not a full 9.
I thought it was an 8.
An 8.
Because it was. It had plenty. Just when you thought you were falling into just the rhythm of the race, and we know what's going to happen, and I was in the journal, I was in the media pen at different centre at different times throughout the race. I'd sort of moved in about 6 different places to watch this race because of the sort of race it was, and I was up there right towards the end, and everyone was annoyed because they were writing their race summaries and they thought they had it summed up, and then all of a sudden everything had to be scrapped.
Something else was
because
happening.
There was something more important to add in there.
Yep.
And things were being turned on their heads at any moment. And so I did like it about that about the race. I want to talk about now.
Yep.
Let's get into the controversy.
Okay.
And then we can go through teams. I think it's a really good way to do this race is to go through teams.
Good.
Let's talk about the controversies of the races.
Yep.
How do you feel the stewards dealt with everything?
I thought they dealt with everything actually really well across the race weekend. Really well. There's no decision that I left Albert Park going, no, they've got that wrong, or I'm unhappy with it, or it should have been dealt with better. I actually think they nailed everything that they had to across the race weekend.
There's been huge criticism of them, but I'm actually totally in agreement with you.
Yep.
And this isn't because we've been to the Grand Prix and we're just blinded by the lights. I feel like they actually nailed every rule that they needed to follow up on. They were a little slow at times.
Yep.
There was a little bit, but we can talk about why that was the case.
But it wasn't like an hour after the race slow.
It was close. It was the last red flag situation was close to that.
Yes.
But I think I know why that was the case.
Okay, yep.
But I think there was criticism of the first red flag.
Yep.
And I'm with everybody on that. I don't know that they needed to throw that first red flag for the Albon crash.
Yeah. See, I disagree with you there. I think
There was gravel on track. I've never heard of that happening.
There was a lot.
Because of that happening. And so I feel like they could possibly have got away from that, knowing the ramifications of throwing a red flag. Because when we throw a red flag, tyre setups get thrown out the window.
Yep.
People can steal a tyre setup, and I think there is an easy solution to fix this.
Okay.
But, so I don't think they really need to throw it. I think that forever and a day they haven't thrown a red flag for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they need to throw it. However, they were within their rights to throw it.
Yeah, it was an unusual place for an accident at Albert Park. Cannot think of too many times, if any other time, where we've seen an accident there at that corner. We've got our traditional hotspots for accidents and crashes, and that's fine. Like we saw, Gasly and Ocon out of turn 2, absolutely.
Yep.
I think turn 15 as well is a traditional hotspot as well. But from where Albon spun, it was very unusual.
I agree, and there was gravel on track.
Why.
What there wasn't mounds of gravel on track.
No.
But so there was a scattering.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, do we need to be absolutely cleaning up all that gravel?
See, I look at that, and I watched it yesterday from TV perspective, and feel like there was potential for someone to take an incorrect line or a slightly wider line, and then you've got the closeness of the barrier on the right-hand side in particular as you come through the sweeping right-hander. So that's when I looked at that, and when I'm thinking about, okay, what did we have the red flag for? If I was to put myself in the seat of the stewards, that's what I'd look at and go, okay.
Yep, I don't think they made the wrong choice.
No.
I just don't think they needed to make that choice.
That's fair enough.
The second red flag, there was plenty of debris from who was it? Hülkenberg?
Yes. Magnussen.
Magnussen,
Yep.
hitting the wall with his back tyre. Yep, it was an unusual crash, and that one, the debris was spread across long widths of the track.
Absolutely.
So I'm agreeing that one was the one to go to.
Absolutely. Car was stopped on track 2 in a place that was difficult to retrieve.
Yep.
So that's also, yes.
Yep. And then how they dealt with the end. The red flag I don't want to talk about.
Sure.
How they dealt with the end.
Yep.
Now, for me, there's been so much criticism of the way they dealt with the end.
Yep.
I thought they nailed it. I think this is where they absolutely nailed it.
Yep.
In terms of how they dealt with how it all should be set up.
Yep.
They were showing this incident with only sort of 6 laps left to go in the race.
Yep.
And then what they did is they spotted very quickly that they weren't going to get this fixed within 6 laps anyway. We're going to throw a red flag, and we're going to give everyone the chance to finish this race under racing conditions.
Yes.
And so they gave the race a chance to finish. I think there was 4 laps left on the counter.
4 to go. Yep.
And they learnt from Abu Dhabi, where if you just run a safety car and then you're going to run out of laps, so then you've got to do something silly to try and finish the race under racing conditions.
Yeah, just stop.
They learned from it. Yep.
Tidy it up.
They stopped it. Everyone had the chance to change tyres because that's the rules, and I think that rule actually needs to stay, but there needs to be an adjustment to it.
Sure.
And then what they did was they got going under racing conditions. Now, drivers complained because the tyres were cold and the track was really cold. I understand that.
Yep.
It was a tricky restart.
Yeah.
But you are the best driver in the world.
That's
back
exactly
off a
right.
little bit.
Yep.
And yes, there is everything to play for, and you can't afford to back
Play
off.
to the conditions.
But yeah, that's right. And so I think they really, we gave it a chance. From there, you just sort of run through on a safety car and finish it off.
Yeah.
That would be the only other change I'd make. Pausing the race because we knew they weren't going to get another lap in because of the situation of the amount of laps left. They weren't going to be able to race under racing conditions. Just run it under safety car. Tell everyone to be incredibly careful and run across the line. Now, the problem with doing that is that it would have changed everything with the order.
Yes.
And they wouldn't have been able to reset that order. And that's where I think a few little mistakes were made. But they gave it a chance to finish under racing conditions. The drivers didn't allow it to finish under racing conditions because of the mistakes that were made. They had to go, tick the box, rightio, the race is finished. Don't come back in for a red flag and then have to set up that situation. That was probably the part that I was a bit disappointed with, is that last situation, just run it under safety car conditions. There was no one in immediate danger.
No.
Tell everyone to slow down. This isn't going to finish. Everyone will get the idea real quick, and you're in that order. And I think that would have been the right way to finish the race.
Yep. I don't mind that.
You wouldn't have been able to get the reset of the order.
No.
Which is the other thing that people are really disappointed with. How do you feel about them resetting that order to put Alonso back in the 3rd position and all those sorts of things?
Yeah, pretty happy.
Pretty happy with that.
Because, but also, I think, I mean, as much as we don't like it, that's the rule. Like, if not every runner goes through the sector, then, that's the rule, I guess.
I tend to agree with you, and I think this is the reason why it took so long to come to the conclusion they did, because I think they actually looked for as many different possibilities to find an order,
and from
the restart.
What I've looked at,
because you don't want to do a restart and have all that happen, and there not be consequences for people, and there not be situations where, well, how come Alpine have been taken out, but then Alonso's been put back in place? Yes. How come Sainz is getting a penalty, but Stroll's allowed to run off the track all by himself, and gets put back in place? And so it was a tricky situation, but I'm with you. I don't believe, because they threw that red flag, I don't believe they had another option.
No.
And what they needed to do was just hold off on that red flag. There was no one in immediate danger.
No.
They could have waited for the rest of the lap to come around, put out the safety car, and then reevaluate.
Yeah.
They just threw it slightly early, which meant that they couldn't then run everybody and get the order from that restart. Because while it was unfair to some drivers like Alonso, he didn't deserve to be turned around.
No.
Hell, that's racing, and that's the way things happen.
Yep.
And so I think that if they had have just let everyone run behind the safety car, they would have got the sectors in.
Yep.
And we would have just finished under the safety car conditions. They had to go at restarting. They had to go at finishing under racing conditions. Drivers didn't allow it. We got this crazy order. Let's just run with that. Finish the race.
Yeah. I think from what I've read today as well, it looks to have been Alonso that actually was the last man to not make the sector, because when he came off, he kept going.
Which caused the issue.
Yes, and look, a lot of people that I've read today have been really critical of that point that you just made then. Well, what about Gasly and Ocon who DNF'd, but they DNF'd.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Same with, and I can understand the quickness in throwing the red too, because what the stewards are looking at is, in the background, you've got Sargent coming off with... Who did he come up with? I think he went off with Tsunoda in the background, straight into the gravel trap. So you've got 2 cars in the first gravel trap.
Yep.
You've got Alonso being spun around by Sainz. So there's your third car into the wall, which we thought.
I think a lot of this happened after the red flag was thrown, though.
Well,
and that was the issue.
Sargent was the first one off in the background, but because we were watching everyone come through, and with Alonso being spun around... It was straight after Ocon and Gasly come together. The flag
for me, the
thrown.
cars weren't going to get back there anytime soon. Like, they had to complete the rest of the lap to get back to the danger zone.
Yeah.
So I think they had a chance just to sort of take a breath, whereas they threw it before the cars got to the next sector.
But then
I know it's not all cars, but so they threw it before they got to the next sector. Like, that's just a rash decision.
But if you look at it as a Stewart's point of view, like I said, you got Logan and Tsunoda coming off in turn 1. You've got Alonso in the wall at turn 2. You've got Gasly and Ocon coming out of turn 2, both in the wall with debris. And then down at turn 4, you've got Stroll. I don't even know what happened with Stroll. I was trying to find a lockup, but I couldn't find it. Then suddenly you've got Stroll coming straight off into the gravel, and there's that unknown if he's going to start. So within the space of 4 corners, you've got 5 vehicles, and there's the potential that all 5 vehicles need to be recovered. So,
but nothing was going to change before they got to the last.
No, but
sector.
I think it was just because of the mass chaos of that unusual situation where it wasn't 1 or 2, it was 5 runners that they've gone, whoa, hang on, throw it. There's 5 out there, possibly stranded. Don't worry about having to think about this. Throw it right now. I think if it had been 1 or 2.
I mean, it would have been completely ridiculous if they didn't throw one, because they threw one for 1 car.
That's
every time.
Exactly right.
And so it would have looked ridiculous. But I just feel like they could have taken a breath, just waited a second, and you wonder whether they would have realised the situation that they were in. But what it would have done is would have got everyone to that next sector, which would have then allowed for the race to take into account what had happened through those parts. Because Stroll ended up in 4th position, but he didn't deserve to be in 4th position because he couldn't keep his car on the road. And then it would have made more sense for Sainz to get the penalty he ended up getting. It would have made more sense for those sorts of things to happen, whereas we've got this weird situation where one person is being made to penalise for everything everyone else has done.
Yeah.
And I feel like, it sort of didn't quite fit. I know this is hindsight talking.
True.
And that's the key, but there was no reason to throw the red quite so quickly, which would have got everyone to the next sector. You just hold off. There was no immediate danger because the cars weren't back there yet. And you can throw that red flag as they're entering the last sector, and then everyone knows that, right, I'm coming in, or you're putting out the safety car. That would have been a slight change. But once again, I don't think they made the wrong call.
No.
There was other options available to them. And like straight away, the paddock knew there was not enough laps to go.
Yes.
And that they kept on waiting, trying to work out a different solution to try and get racing again.
The crowd was actually chanting one more lap at about the 20-minute mark of what we were waiting for. So they were invested.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is great. And I think that also showed that the fans wanted to see us finish under green, even if it was just one. The general consensus of a Formula 1 fan is that I guess the big no-no is to finish under safety car. No one wants it in any situation, so... All
this critical talk of the stewards, I'll give them an absolute pass.
I give them a full pass.
Flying colours.
A+.
With flying colours. And these are only slight alterations I'll be making. There's a rule change which I think will fix a lot of things.
Oh, good.
But we'll bring that up with George.
What about the science penalty?
Well...
Right call, wrong call?
Wrong call.
Okay, I think right call.
Yeah, and I understand both sides of it.
Yep.
I don't understand how he's the only one who gets the penalty. Everyone other than the cars that so many cars make his mistake on a first corner incident.
Yes.
How does no one else get the penalty?
I think it's probably because it's traditionally first lap, first corner.
Yeah. I understand that. But this is way worse. The cars are
54th lap.
Yeah, everything's so much colder. I think it was really harsh. I think it was really
It's
harsh.
probably more the opportunity that you've raced all day, so you're in your rhythm. You know what you've got to do. You know you don't have many left. Whereas on the first lap, it's all right, let's get going. If you want to throw caution to the wind, go for it. So it's probably that discretion on a driver.
And you want to avoid that. I'll just do whatever because I'm in 13th at the moment.
That's exactly right.
I'll do whatever.
I'm just going to throw it down the inside.
You want to avoid that. Alonso, even though he said that he thought it was really harsh.
And look, it probably magnified because the field was bunched together. So 5 seconds in that situation becomes last.
I feel like if they're going to go and put everyone back in, if they can't find that order, they can take that into account with Sainz's penalty. Put him back into 5th. If Alonso's going back into 3rd, I think he can go to 5th.
Yeah, not awful. I think
I think that needs to be taken into account. Considering that we saw all those other drivers make similar mistakes.
Well, I guess in that case he hasn't lost out, has he? 100%. It's almost like the contact hasn't happened.
And that's right. And while other instances happen, Gasly wasn't to blame. Like Gasly's incident wasn't to blame on Sainz.
So it's not like no penalty points.
We'll talk about him. But anyway, so I think if you're going to that situation, you don't give Sainz the penalty.
Yep, that's fair enough.
Yeah, and I saw him come through the media centre absolutely seething.
I watched him go up, and he after you said that, he stormed through the paddock and straight up. And he went to the second level, which is the podium, from the back end up the stairs. And I actually thought he was about to burst onto the podium, sort of Kimi Raikkonen style. Say, hang on. It's my podium now. Get out of here. But no, he went back down. He just got horribly lost.
Yes, but no, he was very, very upset. And I can understand why. I think if you're resetting, you remove his penalty. You're just saying, right, well, this was a racing incident for everybody. This was a situation of tricky driving. It wasn't like he was being crazy aggressive. He stood to lose just as much as anyone else. Yeah, I think it was poor. Let's talk race. Max, outstanding weekend,
untouchable
apart from a start, and it was wonderful to see him get jumped at the starts. Was it a controlled win or was he pushing hard? Because Russell's come out and said that Red Bull were holding back a little bit. Do you think he was holding back much?
Not at all controlled. From where we were, from where I was
holding
watching,
back then?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he could have won by whatever many minutes he would have loved to have won by. Yeah,
I'm not as convinced that it was as it was an easy win.
Watching him down the main straight and from high up, the gap that he was pulling down the main straight was phenomenal.
But then stopped. As time went on, it stopped.
You could see it.
Because what we did see is everyone went into that tyre management mode.
Yeah.
Everyone went into that situation where they were managing tyres because they didn't want to make the extra stop because it was tricky to overtake. And so we did see that. And so I don't know that we really saw whether he was holding back or not, but what we did see is we saw cars be competitive with his pace. And that, I think is just because he pulled back everything.
And look, I probably tend to think it is because he was, as I said, he was gapping Hamilton at a rate of knots, and then suddenly he wasn't. We had a pretty steady...
He built his gap and then he held his gap.
Yeah, he built probably 3/4 of the length of the front straight and then held that. But he skipped away within 5 laps I counted. He was out of there.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned as what I have been in the past. I think teams are starting to find out where they're at and pushing up a little bit closer.
Fair.
Perez, what were your thoughts on Perez's race?
I think it was good. I think he matched most of our predictions actually to where he got. He was
I predicted 5th.
You did predict 5th, which is good. I said 7th. I think.
Yeah, which would have been right. If everyone had stayed on position, yes.
But
so we're both right in a way.
We were. Yeah, look, he wasn't going to make the podium. He wasn't going to win. He did everything he needed to do. I don't know that flags really helped him or hindered him. I think he was probably going to make his way through regardless.
It took a long time to get around.
He did take a long time, but at the same time, when I think about there's probably only 2 people that could make their way from last to first, and that would be Lewis. And that would be Max right now. And I don't even know that Fernando could make his way from last to first. But they're the 2 that could do that. You think George could probably be on Perez's. Even Leclerc. We saw Leclerc in, where was it? Was it Jeddah? Where he had his penalty last year? No, not last year. Track escapes me. But even Leclerc struggles to make his way through. The Ferrari does. It's just,
Yep.
That's where he was going to be.
Terrible weekend, improved race.
I think,
terrible weekend.
Really saved his weekend, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think with
100%.
his not with the craft and the racecraft that he showed, but just the end result.
Interesting that Red Bull's moved away from it as a car issue.
Yeah,
which is once again, and I've been harping on this matter. Once again, there's a little bit of difference between the stories coming out of the Perez camp and the Red Bull camp.
Engine map issue was the first one. So brake mapping was alleged to be the issue
from Perez
Sunday morning,
not from Red Bull.
No, that's right. So that was the issue to begin with, brake mapping.
Once again, there's that slight difference in opinion from those two camps, which is it's an interesting thing. I'm going to be watching very, very carefully.
Yep.
But I thought it was an okay performance. 7th wouldn't have been good enough for me, because he took too long to get around some drivers.
Yeah, okay.
But he was gifted those extra positions because of the late lap shenanigans.
Yep.
Which sort of glorified his recovery a little bit. I think we would have been a bit more harsh on him.
But it wasn't
not being able to get around.
It wasn't
Norris.
A spectacular drive.
No, not being able to get around Norris for a long time. I thought was
made his way through.
Pretty disappointing.
But he did what he had to do, though. He had to get back up there, and I think had he have not, if he had finished 11th or 12th. Oh, jeez. Knives out.
Yep.
Really would have been.
Yep. Hamilton had a pretty interesting weekend. He would have... he said himself that he surprised himself with the race. He's impressed with the way the car's coming along.
Yep.
He's not convinced it's going to be always there, that pace at the moment.
No.
But it's certainly something to build on. Benefited from the George retirement.
Yes.
But it was a good, solid weekend.
It was. I'm a big subscriber of the Merc in cool conditions, and we were cold at Albert Park, and I think that's also why it excelled too. I think conditions played a huge part for the Merc, because I've been saying for many years that it doesn't run in the heat.
George, a bit more interesting of a weekend. Qualified beautifully, started really, really well.
Started phenomenally well.
Yep.
Made a great call to go hards when the first safety car came out.
Made a big call. We'll never know. We talked about it. Remember, we talked about it moments before.
We did.
We said if there's an issue early on, thinking back to Albon last year, running through, you come in.
Yep.
And you go for the long haul because it's tricky to get around.
We saw it in F2 the morning before, didn't we? Did exactly that. Came in, had the hards on, came in, put the medium on, literally did a sight lap, and then come back in and put hards on.
Yep. So we made that call early, and George went with it.
I think it was a great call. I really do.
We'll never know. We'll never know. But I was really intrigued, and I loved seeing the Mercedes split their strategy because it was causing Red Bull some headaches at that point.
Yep.
Now, we were robbed of that moment. We were robbed of that moment because of this red flag situation. Now, the way to fix, and the red flag situation for those people listening at home that don't know what I'm talking about, which is fair enough because that is generally the way things are going, is if there's a red flag called, cars can come in, they can change their tyres, which means they get a free pit stop. They don't have to stop. And what we see is if someone takes a risk like George, he comes in and changes his tyres, he has to pay the full penalty of a pit stop, whereas the teams behind him who haven't done that, they can get that free pit stop. Now, I don't mind cars changing tyres. I think it's important that they can change tyres and red flags because you can fix cars. You want to fix up any issues with tyres.
Yep. It
makes sense.
Yep.
The easiest fix is it's not your compulsory tyre change. So in a race, you don't actually have a compulsory pit stop.
Yep.
You must run the two different compounds of tyre.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to fix this problem is you must have a pit stop in racing conditions. And so it's not if you're making a tyre change under red flag, that can't be your compulsory tyre change.
Okay.
You must make another one somewhere else in the race.
So just compulsory stop in general.
Yeah. There must be a racing timed stop. Now I don't mind if that's under yellow flag because that's a different situation. You're running the dice in a different way.
Yeah. VSC.
Don't have a problem with that. Yep, you're running because that one's even more risky because it might change at the wrong time, and then all of a sudden you've made a pit stop under the wrong time of the race, and it's not ideal for you. So I don't mind people rolling the dice on that one. But yeah, so it's simple. You can change your tyre. It's just not your compulsory tyre change. You must make another one. And what that does is it allows George to make that change as well in this situation.
Yep.
So he can now get back on a different set of tyres as well. it allows everyone else to change that, but they're still going to have to make that change somewhere else along the way. And I think that just makes everything easy. It's a really easy fix. Thoughts?
Yeah.
I just don't like the fact you get a really huge advantage from that situation.
No. Yeah, I don't know. I agree with you, but then I also disagree with you in part. But
why?
Yeah.
Why? What's the disagreement?
I guess it's probably just back to that sometimes that's just
sometimes
how it
that's
goes.
racing. And I love that sentence.
Sometimes that's how
it is
goes.
My favourite sentence. It's just a huge benefit, which is why I like it under safety car conditions.
Yeah,
because that is also can be a huge benefit, but there's also that thing where, well, it's not really our ideal time to make that change.
Yeah.
And so you've got to weigh that up, and all of a sudden, are your tyres going to make it to the end because we stopped slightly earlier than what we wanted to?
Yeah.
And so that keeps racing in it, whereas you're just getting a free kick in this situation. There's a rule there, a really clear rule. You must change compounds, which comes with the fact that you must do a pit stop. In this situation, you're just getting that free kick. And it's too big an advantage. It changes races.
It does. I attribute it to, say, like a sub rule in another sport. So if you got, an AFL in Australia, we had the sub, we had the medical sub.
Yep.
But then now you've got your tactical sub. So it's, you roll the dice. Do you sub a new player on? But then there's the risk that in 2 minutes' time you're going to be injured.
In that situation, you're swapping a player for a player. This is a complete free... It's not even a free kick. It's more than a free kick. It's everything in your race. You're gaining minimum 15 seconds, because under safety cars, generally about 15 seconds for a stop.
Yep.
Under racing conditions, it's anywhere from 20 through to 25.
20, 30,
Yeah, and so it's too big an advantage for a racing condition. It just ruins people's races.
Yeah.
And I think, it's just too much. So I feel for George. I really felt for George in that situation, because he rolled the dice and he went with the aggressive tyre strategy. He had a crack, and it was just taken away from him. There was nothing he's going to be able to do about it.
Well, in the end, he blew up.
And in the end, he blew up, and so I felt for him even more, because I was hoping, I was like, this would be a great performance if he runs through back into third position.
Yep.
And then he blew up, and so it didn't really matter, and it blew up in a big way.
It let go, and you could hear it. For those people that are also in the stands,
it
let go in a big way.
Yep. Your man, Fernando Alonso?
Yep.
Fine weekend, wasn't it?
It was a fine weekend.
It wasn't quite as strong as his other fine weekends this year.
No, he had a little bit of competition around him. He kept pace with the Red Bull, which is good. He kept pace pretty well with the Red Bull, but then you could see there was a real visible management of tyres throughout the race, because as he was working his way through Hamilton, he closed the gap quite closely. But then 2 or 3 laps later, he'd come around the penultimate corner, and then suddenly he's dropped back. And so you could see him really playing that game. He was probably the one driver. If you think about Max out front, stretching his legs, Hamilton was keeping steady pace. And then you've got other drivers through the field. But Fernando, the top 3, was the one where he was really saving tyres, building his and
it was still pushing Hamilton, though, wasn't he?
He was pushing.
Yeah, it was an interesting battle between them.
It was, but you could see him. He was really working overtime to, gap him and then give himself some breathing space and cool off tyres. And he did that for a good 30 laps, I reckon we watched that happen.
Yep.
So, you could see him thinking and really trying to force him into an error, or get him to push when he wasn't prepared to push, why he had, to save tyres. And
Yep, absolutely. I tend to agree with all of that.
No, it was good.
Someone said, actually no, because I think that's a fan frenzy question, but they talked about, like, who's your wow moments? And whenever you see Alonso, there's a wow moment there. And it's because his smarts in the car. Yeah. I just find that just fascinating.
Asking for the rule. As soon as the crash hit, check the rule. Yep. And Silverstone last year.
Yep.
I really hope the Aston doesn't drop off. I don't think it will, but a lot of fans are enjoying him being in the fight.
Absolutely.
And having a new team there. I hope it's not a little bit of, I think of Haas last year, where they're there and then suddenly within 5 rounds, that's it, they're gone, they're back to the back. So I really
hope... It was nice while it lasted. We don't want that. We want to see a strong team build on their foundation that they've laid.
I listened to Mike Crack in the paddock, and I don't know whether he was alluding to either Mercedes or themselves, but pre-race, post-qualifying, he alluded to the fact that, he's hoping that they they're not going to fall back to their traditional spot, which is really 7th. Yep. So I kind of feel like he was referring to himself there.
Yep. Stroll, similar weekend, just not quite as good.
Similar weekend, but then came off by himself.
Well, no. So similar weekend, but not quite as good. He was always running 2 or 3 positions behind Alonso.
He was.
And it was like, you know what? This is a pretty good weekend for Stroll. Because Alonso was probably doing more than expected. There was extra competition around there. He was well in that hunt. He was having a competitive race with those around him in like machinery.
Yep.
And then he made that big mistake at the end.
He did.
Ran off all by himself.
Just all by himself.
Yep.
Do you think... How many races do we need to give Lance before he needs to actually outrace Fernando? Like at what point do we go and say, okay, Lance needs to start...
Well, he should have done it already because...
matching or beating Fernando.
He should have had those races already because Alonso hasn't had a long time in his car.
He hasn't. And he's. I know we're only 3 rounds in, but it's something that is in the back of my mind you got to start thinking about because, yes, Fernando is going above and beyond, like Seb did last year, and these guys are... Seb had a couple of weekends where he was going above what the car could do, especially in last year's car. But we need to... I reckon we need to give it about maybe 4 rounds.
For what? It's a null and void question.
But
there's no pressure on the man.
But I think that the pressure will start to come because at some point he needs to beat Fernando across a race weekend. He can't go the whole year and be beaten in quali and beaten in race.
What will happen if he doesn't?
Well, nothing.
It's similar. Like my performance on this podcast has been below par for a long, long time. But hey... I set up the equipment, you don't know how to do it, so bad luck.
It's true.
You got to deal with me, and that's the situation with Stroll.
I love the way you referred to yourself with that.
Stroll has that team.
I know nothing's going to happen, but I just... There has to come a point...
You want us to put out a petition?
No, I don't want a petition. I'm just saying that as a second driver, you've got Fernando, who's got 3 podiums on the trot, and I know that he's not going anywhere, and he's doing not too badly, and the car's driving well. But he has to have a weekend where he beats Fernando. He can't just sit there and just think, well, you do all the heavy lifting, and I'll come home in 8th.
Yes, we can.
Like he has to beat him.
Yes,
he has to beat him. 4 rounds.
Norris in McLaren. Why are we talking about McLaren so soon?
Because
everyone else crashed. That's why.
That's exactly why.
But yeah, let's talk about Norris. He had a fantastic race.
He did have a good race.
I thought he had nearly the best race of anyone.
He's not a very happy man, is he?
No,
just in general.
No, he's
very emotionless at the moment.
Yeah,
from what I saw across the weekend, anyway.
It was a strong weekend. He was pushing his car into the points.
Yep.
And it was really strong. He was holding off Perez for quite a long while.
Yep.
He was driving that McLaren faster than what it looked like it could go.
False hope over the weekend, yes or no?
No.
Okay.
No, because he was driving it in the points already.
Okay.
That where he ended up is not where they are. They're not the 6th car.
No. I would say maybe.
But he was
not sure.
That would put him ahead of Ferrari. That would put him ahead of the Aston Martins and the Mercedes.
Well, if you look at who was in front of him that DNF'd, Albon was in front of him, DNF'd. Both the Alpines would have finished in front of him, they DNF'd. So Charles finished in front of him,
that's what I'm saying. He's on the cusp of points.
Yeah.
Which is where he was running, and then he wasn't in 6th, but he was on the cusp of points. But I think he was fighting better in that car than what he traditionally would have been. Because... Yeah, he was holding off Perez for I'm not saying quite a long while, for a really long
time, yeah.
Yeah, in that McLaren that has horrible drag and very, very poor top-end speed.
Absolutely.
And so, I thought it was a really fine race. His first points, and he picked up 8 of them. So, yeah.
How are they going to go at Baku?
Terribly.
I think they're going to be absolutely blown off the park.
Terribly. However, there is the glimmer of hope. There is that beautiful unicorn out in the distance that they're bringing updates. Their first lot of updates to Baku.
I'm not quite sure on McLaren.
In general. I'm 100% with you. Unless this update removes all that horrendous drag that they have.
Which is a huge task.
Yeah. Unless it's removing all of that, we're in big trouble in Baku. There's no doubt about it.
No,
But yeah, so 8 points, good haul of points, and that's the thing when you're not going well.
Well, you got to grab them
where you can. You go and grab them.
Yep.
Oscar Piastri first points, ended up in 4th. He was in the fight for points throughout the race. Looked like he was going to get squeezed out, but he was also sort of in that fight for points.
Yep.
But then he was sort of pushed back into 12th.
It was a real sort of ebb and flow weekend for him.
It was a solid weekend, and Mark Webber, I think, described it best. It was a beautiful learning weekend. He got plenty of running time on inters in a practice session,
which is great.
He got all those restarts, all that chaos, and through all of these things, he kept a really neat and tidy race.
Yeah, neat. I think that's a really great way to sum it up.
And so Webber said it was a fantastic learning weekend, and it came with the bonus of picking up your first points, and he picked up 4 of them. So, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. McLaren is not fixed by any stretch of the imagination in these little updates they bring to Baku, because it's not the big, completely new concept like Spec B car that they're talking about.
Yep.
It's only some slight ones. But they're hoping that they're going to be good. It's not going to fix everything for Baku, because Baku has that huge long straight, and that McLaren's going to hate that straight unless they come up with something new for it.
Yeah, right.
Hulkenberg. Let's talk the Hulk.
Yeah, Hulk, yeah.
Was looking pretty strong.
It was looking quite good, actually.
Yeah, really strong in qualifying, really strong in practice sessions.
Yep.
Race, not as strong, but then he was there and thereabouts throughout in that fight for points.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, by the time you get back to the end of where the points are given out, there's a beautiful battle going on there.
I think so too,
which I think is going to lend itself really nicely to F1.5. I was concerned about F1.5.
Were you? That's right, you were too last week.
And I think we're actually going to have the best battle for it, because points are going to be precious. And I think if you can get a big haul of points, for example, like Norris did in this situation, it's going to just change all sorts of things for you. So, yeah.
Yep.
But, yeah, he was in that battle for points, and it was an interesting weekend. His teammate, less so. He was going okay at best, being outshone by his new teammate, and then he went and made that really weird mistake where he crashed into a wall and said he didn't feel it.
Yes.
Unusual?
Yeah, I think so, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it pricked the attention of quite a few people around the paddock when he said he didn't really feel it.
Yeah, I agree with you in that, yeah.
But, it was just a mistake. That's what it was. But, yeah, just the fact that he reckons he couldn't feel it.
Yeah.
It's like, what's happened to my car? And, yeah, it was unusual. Next in the points is the Alfa Romeo, which they were looking like they were having a pretty poor weekend.
They really did.
But in the end, Zhou comes home with 2 points.
Yeah, I think Zhou had a fabulous weekend, to be quite honest. I think he had one of his strongest race weekends of his career thus far.
I reckon we're saying that a little bit about Zhou this year.
I think so too, actually, because we were putting the heat on him a bit at the start of the year and thought, okay, but he's been good. And then to combat that, I thought Valtteri had one of his worst weekends of his career.
Did he have an Australian in Australia?
He kind of did, because he is an adopted Australian, and we talked about that. Australians don't do well in Australia, and
he delivered in that.
It was just.
I mean, he came home in 11th, which doesn't sound too bad.
Absolutely
but
not.
That was not reflective of his
because
weekend.
It was absolutely
Yep. It was one of those things that you just, oh my God, we can't buy anything for Australian in Australia, and now that he's adopted, it's obviously cursed him. So,
yeah,
maybe pretend to be more Finnish when you're here next year.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, don't be Australian.
Yeah, and then do that somewhere else. But we do love him.
Yes, we do. He is our adopted driver.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri. It was an interesting battle. He also had a pretty decent weekend.
Yeah, he did actually.
In amongst the points, fighting for that 10th position. He had an interesting battle with both the McLarens there for a while. Norris got him eventually. I think Piastri probably would have. He did. He's listed here as he did, but I don't remember him actually overtaking him. I don't know whether it all happened in chaos or...
It might have had... There was a lot going on across
might have been at a restart, not sure.
Yep,
but
could have been.
So he... but anyway, he ended up getting him, and but yeah, it was strong. Picked up his first point for the year.
Grabbed a point.
He was pretty happy with his weekend.
Yeah.
In contrast, Nick de Vries is sort of a bit of a nowhere man at the moment.
He's a bit lost, isn't he? I am surprised at how lost he is. because of, the running that he did last year was phenomenally
good.
He has been so successful in Formula E. And then he's a bit lost. But look, I mean, he's harsh. He's 3 races into his career. As a full-time driver.
And he's not exactly in a rocket. Yeah.
No, you're spot on. So, but just looks to be a bit...
With those sorts of drivers, if they're not in a rocket, and you're just looking for the glimpses. And I think we saw some glimpses for Piastri on the weekend. Yeah, we did. Really neat, tidy stuff. He was the fastest on inters in the practice.
And last year with Joe, we saw a couple of weekends, which is here or there. And look, maybe we're just waiting for Nick.
Here or there.
Waiting for Nick to have his. But,
yeah. And I think probably Sargent probably gets the same. We're moving on to Williams a bit early because it shouldn't be talked about just yet. But
I think Sargent's been probably better than De Vries, to be honest.
I don't know there's much difference between them yet.
There's I would say a little bit of a difference. Yep. I look at both the drivers, and Sargent looks like someone who, if you were to ask me, is it worth betting on him scoring a point next weekend? I'd say yes.
Yep.
But if you ask me, is it worth that with Nick? I'd say no.
Yep. We jumped ahead because I do want to talk about Albon in a minute.
Yep.
Carlos Sainz.
Yeah.
And Ferrari. Carlos Sainz was on for a really solid weekend. It was a Ferrari I was expecting. You weren't expecting that Ferrari. You'd said that you thought I was talking them up too far.
Yep.
But I thought they were showing some really good form on track.
Yep.
And Leclerc didn't have that weekend. He had a bit of a horror. Gee, we say that a bit about Leclerc at the moment.
We do. He's 7th.
Qualifying wasn't good.
So far.
His start was horrible.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Anyway, but Sainz was looking to have the opposite. He was looking to have a really solid weekend, picking up a big cache of points, and then he messed up that last restart.
He did.
And it cost him everything. And as we discussed earlier, I feel like it was too much considering what else went on, but it was his mistake.
Yeah. He really worked for it across the weekend, and he was your driver that towards the end of the race weekend caught your attention. It was like, hang on.
Yeah. He was well in the frame for my
points. Are we
on
here? Is a podium out of the question? Or he was
looked
really
like he was
working.
ramping up his race for a big finish.
Absolutely,
Yep. Which would have been hard because, I mean, getting around Lewis and Fernando, not exactly easy beats. And so it would have been tricky. But yeah, was he running in 4th, I think?
I think he was running in 4th, and he was slowly starting to look like he was going to catch Fernando. But you're right, if you think about 3 drivers on the grid that are going to be the absolute hardest to get a pass on, well, had
the ones in front of him.
Yeah, he literally had them in a line right in front of him this weekend.
Yep. And then, Leclerc, really disappointing weekend. He's hardly himself. You know what? I feel like he should be.
Yeah, I don't know. What is he, 7th? DNF 7th, and I think DNF, or is it the other way around? It's like 7th, DNF 7th. Yep. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, yes.
He gives off a really arrogant vibe at times. Would you agree with that?
No.
Oh, really? Sometimes I get that, but on the weekend I saw no evidence of that. So maybe I've just picked up the wrong vibe from him. It couldn't have been a friendlier character in the paddock.
Right.
In interviews, he was really... he thought about questions, even if they're a bit dull or dud. He'd really give it some time, and he'd look the journalist in the eye and really give him an honest answer. And I was really impressed by him. His driving, not so much.
Yep.
Obviously, he's fast, but yeah,
he's
not this weekend.
Very quick.
Let's get into Alpine.
Okay.
On for a great race weekend, and then it all fell apart. And it was the crash we're all waiting to see happen.
Yep.
But it didn't really happen the way we were expecting it.
No.
It was caused by Gasly for starters.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. The Ocon had his nose in a dangerous spot, which is very Ocon-y to do.
It is very... And however, to not back out of it is...
However, to back out of it would have cost him places. It really would have cost him places because that would have allowed drivers to go around him. If he had backed out of that situation, it would have meant that he would have to really back out and then he'd be stuck behind his teammate who's also in a bit of a precarious situation. He's going slower than everybody else.
Yep.
It would have cost him big positions, and I actually don't mind the fact that he kept it in.
Okay.
I think if he had backed out, he would have lost out big time. He took the risk. He kept it in, which is very Ocon-y.
Yep.
And then Gasly couldn't collect it properly the way he wanted to.
I don't attribute the crash to anyone in particular. Full 50-50 for me.
And the fact that
did you see the video from Alpine? Did you see the sort of the afterwards?
Yeah.
It felt a little bit forced.
Yes.
A lot forced.
No, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, they didn't look happy. I think even in the paddock as they were leaving,
lost heaps of points.
Yeah,
heaps of points. So Gasly was grumpy, and he's going to feature in a Mini for this reason.
Okay, yeah.
But he caused the crash. He caused the crash. He went off the track.
Mm.
That causes a crash in this situation. You can't be grumpy, but we'll get to it.
All right.
But so anyway, it was a absolute bonanza of points all lost.
Yep.
For Alpine, but they showed really strong pace, and it was good to see, particularly Gasly. He was really strong in amongst all those really fast cars. He looked well and truly within the same pace of Ferrari, Aston Martin, and even Mercedes.
Yep.
So through race pace. So,
he said prior to the weekend, he said top 5, didn't he?
Yeah.
And I guess he was running fifth.
He was on that.
And we even talked about that their showing last year at Australia was phenomenally good. So they had good good background to go off to sort of be confident.
Ocon was looking really solid as well. Just not quite as high, but also looking really solid.
Yep.
And then the last one we need to talk about is Alex Albon, who was having, once again, and we've said this a lot, he was having a brilliant weekend as well.
Pumped him up all weekend. I pumped his tyres up.
He made you look like a dickhead.
And he let me down massively.
Yeah,
but till that point, I was very correct.
No, absolutely you were. He was driving beautifully. He wouldn't have stayed there. He wouldn't have stayed in 6th, but he would have picked up some good points.
Oh, I reckon he would have.
Perez still hadn't overtaken him at this stage.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
And we hadn't seen like the race unfold a little bit more. And I think we probably would have, as cars stretched out, we got out of DRS zones. He would have been picked off at some point.
The top speed is good.
But
is good.
I feel like he would have been picked off at some point, but it was certainly on for good points.
Yeah, really great result. Anyway,
then it didn't.
Maybe next week.
Maybe
next week.
Right, let's get into your 3, 2, and 1.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Wow, what a race! What a difficult 3, 2, 1 to give.
And this is thanks to All Signs.
Yes.
3, 2, and 1. That's awesome.
I'm going to give...
nearly forgot, what's he?
I'm going to give 3 to Lewis. I thought he had a great weekend.
Really?
I really do. It's P2. No, sorry. Yeah, P3.
Gifted the set.
Finished second.
No, P2.
Yeah, was he P2? No, George was P2. George qualified P2, sorry. Yeah, qualified P3. Finished P2. Jordan, I thought he was great. He was good. He was really good. He was really good. He really kept Alonso at bay. He pushed hard. He was at times was pushing Max.
I'd tell you what I liked. I enjoyed his move on Max.
I enjoyed the move, ready to go across the line.
We didn't talk about it enough, but yeah,
it was boot in, and he just, I'll grab you if I can grab you, and
it was very Max move on Max.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great weekend. I thought he was really, really good. 2. Whoa, this is really difficult. I'm gonna give 2 to Piastri.
Ooh.
Because you're right. His racing across the weekend was quite good, and I think for someone who, for me, there's a minimal to no expectation on him this year. He finished last every race, and I'll be fine with that.
Yep.
Yeah, good quality points in Australia. It was neat. It was tidy. It was error free. It was at times fast. It was at times controlled and measured, and I thought it was a really professional weekend from him.
Yep.
So 2 for him for there. And my 1 point, as silly as this sounds, I'm going to give 1 to George. I know he DNF'd, but he put it on P2, and he made the move to lead the race, and I think his hard tyre move was going to be, I know we didn't see it, was going to be an absolute masterstroke, and I tell you what, we could very well have been sitting here celebrating a George win in Australia.
I'm going 3 points to George.
Really? Okay, yeah.
He did everything he possibly could in that car.
Yeah.
That car didn't belong in that position.
Red flag wasn't his fault. Engine failure wasn't his fault.
He qualified beautifully. Yep. He made the move. And then everyone was saying that Lewis was getting held up by him. I actually think it was almost supporting Lewis because Lewis had that DRS and it was helping with the defence.
And see, I kind of feel like Lewis would have got him anyway in the end because he was on him in those first few laps. Yeah, it looked to me like he was, he's like,
I think there was a management situation going on.
And that would have been really enjoyable to watch too. To watch Lewis attacking George. What would George have done?
Yep.
Would he have played the team game, or would he have gone, hang on, there's a win here?
Yep. I'm going to give 2 points to Norris. I thought Norris's race was really strong, considering that McLaren.
Yep.
And I'm going to actually give the one to Oscar because
I don't mind that.
I thought it was nice and clean.
Yep.
Probably some honourable mentions to Alonso. I mean, Max. But, I mean, Max got jumped. It wasn't like it was the strongest of races. He also ran off the road at one point, which, my God, that created some excitement.
Absolutely, it did, didn't it?
Just to see, can't believe he only lost 3 seconds or whatever it was with that really big off.
Yes.
It was interesting.
It speaks volumes of where they're at the moment with him and that car.
Yeah. But I thought Yuki had a strong race. I thought Gasly, until he crashed, had a strong race. So could have gone all over the joint. But yeah, they're my people for this one.
Yep.
Dud of the day. Now, you have come to me and you said you want a couple.
Want a few.
You want a couple of categories for duds.
What are you doing, dud?
You would think that a man who's just been given the weekend of a lifetime, the opportunity.
It's part of the show.
The opportunity of the lifetime to be in the paddock, you'd think he'd be a bit grateful, wouldn't you, folks?
I am super
But he
grateful.
is coming here, guns loaded, wanting to take pop shots at all sorts of people, and I, for one, love it.
Good. Thank you.
What are you going for?
Good. All right. So I'm going to start with just traditional driver race start of the weekend.
Whoa.
Just your traditional
Plain Jane.
business as usual, plain Jane. And as much as it hurts, I have to give it to Valtteri because it was it was nowhere. It was just looked like he was going to finish last at some stage. I think most times when I was looking at the timing screen, he was 19th. At one stage, and I thought, jeepers, what are you doing? So, even with the red flag, still ended up in the back with the red flag. He had a shocker. I love him to death. I really, really do. He is the most approachable, kind-hearted, most sort of loving driver there is in the paddock, and I think he is just a phenomenal personality of the sport. But just this weekend, he was off. Do
you find it weird that such a massive change in his personality to get so into this Australian acting role?
Because I think this is him, and I think about when drivers have gone to big teams. So if I look at Mark Webber, for example, when he went to Williams, it was really shirt, collar, clean shaven. This is the look. This is our team brand. You must toe the team line. Went to Red Bull. Opened up a little bit more, which is fine. Same for when you go to Ferrari.
Not much more.
No, a little bit more. Same for when you go to Ferrari. You know, you've seen people come through the Ferrari. Look at Seb when he left Ferrari and went to Aston. Again, he was telling the real slick, you're a Ferrari man line. Went to Aston, long hair, beard, just himself. So
it's a good point you made.
Yeah, I think
there was glimpses of him being a really funny guy. Yeah. And yeah, I'm with you.
Even in his later time.
Probably held him back
yes.
and things.
Yes.
We had that conversation many times where we thought that this will be the best thing for him, and I still believe it is. He's not going to win a world championship with them.
No.
But my God, he seems like a happier man.
Yep.
My dad driver of the day.
Sure.
I'm going to give it to Gasly.
Okay.
Even though he had a really fine weekend.
Yep.
He was visibly upset after the race.
Yes.
And I don't really get why.
Okay.
Well, I understand why, because he couldn't understand why they weren't placed back into that order like everyone else was.
Because you crashed.
Well, that's right. You didn't actually finish the race.
You didn't crash, yeah.
It wasn't like they were completing the race at that moment. And so, yeah. But he was really grumpy. And for me, like, this man is on the absolute limit of points. And was lucky. Very lucky. Don't use that word very often, do I?
Should have got one at least.
Very lucky not to lose a race because of his point situation. Yep. And he was still getting around like it was poor him. He caused the whole bloody thing.
Do you think it's
And he was in a foul mood in the paddock afterwards, and he should have been missing Baku. And we should have seen our man Jack.
Well, I was going to say, is that the FIA actually sort of sending a message that we're actually not going to sit someone out?
Well, it felt a little bit that way.
For me, he should have got one at least.
And their mantra was, well, he took a teammate out, the team can deal with it.
And then that's why I feel like it was a bit of...
I'm with you.
I'm with you.
Yep. So he gets my dad. Yeah. He gets my dad. You don't get to be grumpy. You have to be grateful in that situation, Pierre.
All right.
Right, who else you want to hit?
All right, my next dud is, it's going to be, give me a paddock dud.
A paddock dud?
From the paddock.
I'm going to give it to the beautiful people out the front of Mercedes.
Beautiful people out the front of Mercedes.
There were a lot of beautiful people out the front of Mercedes.
Yep.
And they weren't really watching the race. Yeah. They were there. They were having a lovely drink.
Yep.
They weren't really watching. You could see the passionate Formula One fans, and you could see everybody else there.
Yep.
And so they'll get yours. They'll get it. It's like, what, you're wasting it for everybody else.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, I'm going to give you. I'm going to split this one.
I'll give you the opposite actually to that.
Okay.
Though.
Yes.
McLaren.
Yep.
Invite everybody in. They couldn't be more hospitable.
Yes.
But like, you've got cameramen there watching the race who can't necessarily like go and watch it somewhere else.
Yep.
You've got presenters, you've got some of their people, but then like they'll invite you in, you want to drink, have a seat. Yep. They couldn't be friendlier.
Awesome.
Couldn't be friendlier.
Awesome. Love it. All right, I'm going to split mine between two.
Go on.
Blue Suit Man.
We've mentioned Blue Suit Man.
Mentioned Blue Suit Man. He has to get an official episode mention.
Drunk prick.
For pushing in, making a kid.
Pushing in front of the kid.
And then handing the kid the phone and then asking the kid to take his photo with Valtteri.
Mm-hmm. While also getting in under Valtteri's umbrella
while his media manager is saying no.
During an interview.
What an absolute wanker.
Yep. You don't belong in the paddock.
Absolutely do not.
Piss off.
Yep. Take your photos and your selfies elsewhere. And then the other half of my points is going to go to the family, the rich family, who made their way up on top of the pits right next to me throughout the race. Second half of the race, appeared at like lap 38 out of nowhere. Spent most of the time trying to get selfies of themselves with one of the cars, which was referred to by the dad in the background. They spent a good 10-15 minutes doing that, and then, as they tried to just stand in a line as a family, pushed the young girl next to me, and then started pushing me, like nudging.
Using her to push you.
Using the mum to come in and point at something, and then using the son to come in. Oh, look at this over here, darling. Like, and nudging me across. I didn't move. I was like, I am not moving an inch here. And then just, they were talking about, what does the red flag mean? Is that it? Is the race over? Like, piss off. What are you doing there?
Find somewhere else to be.
Find somewhere else to be, like at home in front of your TV.
There's plenty of polo matches to be.
Absolutely. If you are at a Formula One race and you're turning up to watch it at lap 38 after spending most of your time drinking, and then you have zero idea on what's going on, you do not belong there. Please leave. Go home.
Fantasy.
I've got a hero of the hour too.
Oh,
can I quickly throw it in there?
Please.
I'll quickly throw it in there.
This is nearly my favourite.
All right, hero of the hour.
Go on.
So you met him on the way out. So at the end of the night, in the paddock, is the young Mexican guy
kid.
Yeah, who I met out the front of Red Bull, like right at the end of the night. So lights and that off, infrastructure all coming down. Had a chat to him. He was lovely. He moved to Australia a couple of months ago. I think he was studying at uni. He was sort of talking to me about his English wasn't amazing, but I could have a conversation with him. Mm-hmm. And he spent Saturday looking for Checo to get his autograph on his hat. And he asked me if I had anyone at that time, like I had Dan signed my helmet and Charles had signed a couple of things for me too. And I said, yeah, he'll be here. Just be patient, you'll get him. And then I disappeared to go and grab Alonso's, which I did. And then I just sort of shook his hand, said, good luck, man. I hope you get his autograph, just sit tight. And he said that he talked to him on Saturday, obviously with Checo's Saturday, did not want to bar of a fan. And then on the way out, as we were leaving, we saw him and fist bump, and he waved his hat to us, and he's like, yes, I got it. So
he was so happy.
He was so happy. And you know what? He is my hero of the hour for the weekend, because that is a person who belongs in the inner sanctum of F1 to be there with the drivers, because all he wanted to do was see his hero and get an autograph off him and watch his race weekend.
So I only saw the end result.
Yep.
But that kid...
He was so happy.
That was proper happiness.
It was pure fan happiness.
giddy.
It was.
And this was a good hour and a half after he got it.
It was.
He was giddy in the way that he got it.
And I love that. So, for those absolute duds that we've talked about, their passes belong with
I've got another
a kid like him.
I've got another hero of the hour.
Go for it.
I'm inspired by you. I'm
Good.
just going back to my notes.
Good.
We're not usually a fan of the national anthems. We've usually got some pretty poor national anthems, and I don't even like our own national anthem personally. No, I think
was it as bad as Saudi's last week?
No, this year's was brilliant.
I can't.
The girl that sang it absolutely nailed it.
Okay, I can't remember it.
It was patriotic enough that it wasn't too much, but she nailed the national anthem, and so I'm going to go with the national anthem and the girl that sang it, which I don't actually have her name.
Okay, good.
For absolutely spot on. I thought she did a great job.
Awesome.
We need to talk about a couple of things.
Okay.
Oh, actually, no, we'll get into them in news.
All right.
Before we do, though, do you think the fourth DRS worked in Australia?
Yes.
No, absolutely perfect, wasn't it?
Oh,
it was
God,
the right amount.
Say no for a second.
No, it was the right amount because it wasn't easy.
Nah.
Australia is still a hard place to overtake.
Yep.
However, if you're close enough in cars,
yep,
you can make it happen. Whereas in the past, we couldn't make it happen. Even if you were slightly faster than the car in front of you,
yep,
you didn't have that ability.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't see changes at the front because Max, he got in front through other means,
yep,
pretty much.
Yep.
I mean, he went around, but he had the faster car by distance.
Yep.
And then the rest were about the same, but they were in that tyre and management phase.
Yep.
And I think Mercedes was slightly faster than Alonso. I think Alonso was just slightly fast enough
to
hold off the others, but we saw enough passes throughout the midfield.
Yep.
And moving up, where we can say, yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I wish it was there last year because I reckon Dan Ricciardo would have absolutely lapped it up last year because it was one of his few good races last year. So yeah, I was really, really impressed. Let's get into fantasy.
All right, let's get into fantasy. Good week for fantasy. I'm loving fantasy.
Gee, I can't get my head around the high points. We're seeing lots of high points. I think I've done well, and then everyone else has done weller.
Good.
Yeah.
Done weller.
Yeah.
You idiot. All right. Let's go through us first. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. We'll start with Jay. We'll start mid-table with Jay. So Jay...
A bit condescending.
No, that's not too bad. So Jay had a really good weekend. Gee, he's got a lot of money left. Like, a lot of money left.
How much?
He's got $7.5 million left.
That's a whole driver.
Spend it, Jay. Spend it.
No, I need to.
I can tell you exactly where he's going wrong here. All right, so he's got 281 points across the weekend. Double points on Max for 72. Gasly is his second driver for 1. Fernando for 23, Valtteri for 12, Stroll for 21, and then like 90% of people playing F1, he's got Red Bull and Aston for 98 and 54. I don't know that anyone's got anything outside of those. Mm-hmm. Like, I think this year we're just going to see every person is probably going to end up with the...
There's evidence that it isn't the case, but it should be.
Evidence that it is the way you sort it to go, isn't it? All right, so then we'll go to you next.
Okay.
Down in 31st. So, sorry, Jay is sitting at... Sorry, that bit missed me. Where is Jay sitting at? Jay is sitting at 33rd. All right, so that's not too bad.
Where am I?
Where are you? You are sitting at... 31st. Oh, you're above him.
Not okay with this.
Sorry.
It sounds very close. It sounds rather close. What do you think? I
thought you were much lower. I was scrolling down trying to find you. No, sorry, force a habit. So you're on 850 points for the year, and Jay is on 837.
You didn't used to be this condescending.
Sorry. I was caught in last year. So he scored 311 for the weekend, 72 for Max with a double, 52 for Checo, 23 for Fernando, 1 for Gasly, 11 for Hulk.
Imagine how many Gasly would have got me and Hulk would have got me.
But didn't. But didn't. And then you've got the Aston and the Red Bull as well, 54 and 98. And then last of all, going to me, equals 6th, 925 points, dead set with Speedy Team 1. Now, if you are the owner of Speedy Team 1, please get in touch because we have the exact same team.
Really?
Same team.
Who's going to pull the change?
Who's going to blink first on? Yes. Interesting. Probably not me. All right, so I'm sitting on...
What do you mean?
Equals 6. With it? I actually use my no negatives, which I think is probably not a bad call because there was potential for lots of points to be lost across the race weekend. And Stroll was on -5 on Saturday.
Did you end up with a negative?
So no, I didn't end up with a negative. So I haven't lost points there.
So it wasn't a good
No, but it was a good. If you look at it,
it made sense.
It made sense to pull the trigger on that. Anyway,
nothing.
so no negative is gone. So 335 for the weekend, 72 on Max, 52 on Checo, 23 Fernando, 21 Stroll, and Zhou with 15. Zhou is my bargain buy of the year. I thought Lance was going to be, but it's actually Zhou. And then, like everyone else, Red Bull and Aston, 98 and 54. So that's where we're sitting. And then if we're looking at our top 5, which I have actually posted up on social media too, so if that is you, get on Facebook comments, let us know which one you are. WW Jolien PD is 1,022 points. Nando for World Drivers' Championship, 1,016. Stop Inventing, 1,002. Red Bull Catering Fund, 1,001. How close is that for a podium place? And then in 5th position, Make F1 V8 again on 950 points. So if that is you, well done, doing great things. Get in touch with us on social media and let us know that that's you.
Must have used...
Have used triple points. I've been keeping an eye on what people are using above me too. So yeah, and as always, a massive thank you to Chris at Dr. Auto Art, who we do need to get in touch with. We say it every week, don't we? Get in touch with us, please, Chris, who is a wonderful sponsor of our competition this year.
I have spoken to him. We're hoping that he might appear before Silverstone at some point.
Looking forward to that.
But yeah, something before that would also be fantastic because we do enjoy getting some people on.
Yes, but thank you to Chris at Dr. Auto Art. We tag him in all our posts, so jump on our tags, Instagram, Facebook, Redbubble, all these online stores, and check out some of his great pieces of art because that is exactly what you will win if you are a podium finisher in this year's competition.
Fantastic. News. First bit of news is we attended the F1 Armchair Experts annual general meeting on, what was that, Friday night?
It was Friday night, yep.
Forever ago now.
Yep.
And we had a lovely time meeting some of the members there.
Lovely to meet people.
It was fantastic to finally put some faces to some names that we've been in contact with in the past.
Yep.
And so huge thanks to them. They do a really great job of engaging fans, and it's a very similar motto to us. We simply love talking Formula One with people.
Absolutely.
And it rings our bell. It is everything to us. Talking Formula One is so much fun, and it's a good excuse for us to catch up. And they're similar. So they've got the online forum on Facebook. Check them out. They are the best, in my opinion, they are the best group because you get very little amount of aggro on there.
Yep.
There is difference of opinions, absolutely. But it's so well moderated by Durko and the crew.
Yep.
That they've weeded out so many of the pills that just make it unenjoyable. And it is passionate fans.
So thankful we don't have any of those people on our social media.
None of that, which is brilliant. Yep. So they are just Formula One fans, and there's people with different opinions, but it is embraced and it's all done in really good nature. And so it was really lovely to catch up with some of those people, and we met and heard a kid in absolute form with some of his Formula One knowledge, which put everybody to shame there.
Yep.
Just incredible, but huge call out to them because, we had a really fantastic time there. But other news, which is probably needs to be discussed, was probably the track invasion.
Track invasion, yes. I've got 3 other big bits of news after that too. So let's go track invasion.
Track invasion in Melbourne. So
we were watching it. I was watching it while it was happening. I want to give a massive credit to the first security guard on the main straight, literally opposite to the FIA weighbridge, because of the security guards that I could see in my line of sight, he was the only security guard that physically stood in the small gap between the track and the fans and stopped them from coming out.
Yep.
So I watched him do that.
Yep.
Further on down the grid, there was either security that A, just stepped to the side or had no understanding of what was going on the track. So whether or not they A, couldn't be asked, or B, they actually didn't recognise that cars were coming in for a cool-down lap.
Yep.
They let people straight out on the track as well. And there were other pillars and posts that had absolutely no security at that stage there.
Yeah. Australia, and I don't know about other tracks, Australia I feel like is a little bit unique in this situation where they do actually allow people to walk on the track.
Yep.
And I did it years ago.
I have too.
And loved it. It is really cool. You go around and you look at the rubber and there's bits of car sometimes in different places, and It is really fun to go and have a look on the track and whatnot. It's a bit of a thrill. But they've created a bit of a monster here where it got out of hand. It was like there were cars, there was cars buried in gravel pits, but there was cars live moving at speed around on the track. And it was a bit of an issue, and so I think it's certainly something that needs to be fixed. I don't think it's a hard fix.
I think so either.
I don't want to see them stop letting fans on.
It's 2 years in a row.
But what I do want to see is there needs to be a clear moment where they can give the okay to go.
Yep.
But we probably need to see the police presence.
I think that'll be the next step.
There are too many entry points to the track, which seems ridiculous that there's so many entry points to the track, but there needs to be marshals that can get on really quick.
Yes.
So due to the nature of the sport, there needs to be lots of entry points, and so it's a really tricky one. So at sporting events, we see police and security guards go around the ground at certain moments where they don't want people coming on, and the racetrack is so much harder because it's kilometres long. But there certainly needs to be something done.
I think that point that you make there exactly is right. You get to the halfway point or the 3/4 way point in the Grand Prix, and then you start putting additional bodies or additional security in those points. The TikTok video of the fans, which I saw yesterday or the day before, I think I sent it to it, hanging on the fence, and then the fans that literally were on the tarmac filming, just looking to get a shot, just filming Lewis and the entire grid. Cooling down, my God.
Mobbed the cars in the gravel pit.
Yes, I think Magnussen was still in the gravel pit. The car was still live. So it just shows that the fans, for me, I look at that and I think the fans that have invaded the track are the fans that have absolutely no understanding of what's going on. They are not aware that cars are still electrically live while they're parked, and then the understanding of what can go wrong on a cool-down lap, which we've seen in that year. I think it was at China, where Seb and Stroll came together on a cool-down lap. Imagine if that was a car coming into a fan. I just think it is a horrific and dangerous situation, and I tell you what, I hope that with all the CCTV that's around Albert Park, I hope every single one of those people that put themselves in that situation that close, I honestly hope they're banned for life. I don't want you back at racetrack, because, someone gets killed, it'll be fans. The outpour and the arms up towards a team will be phenomenal.
And it's like...
It's not a soccer match. It's not a footy match. It's not a cricket match.
That's right. Like, if you're getting on the pitch in that situation, it's just annoyance to the sport.
That's right. If something goes wrong, you're not going to die.
You're putting people's lives at risk, and it's not just your own. But you're also putting the event at risk, because people like Andrew Westacott then needs to go and explain himself.
Exactly.
And the event managers themselves, when there's relying on some goodwill, but just some sensible...
That's exactly right.
...living from the humans that are there.
And suddenly all the access that you got this year and all the access that you have had in the past, it's suddenly going to go. And
all of a sudden...
And then we're going to throw our hands up in the air and go, well, hang on, what's the point of
coming? What about the fans?
What about me? Why can't I do that? And it's because of these absolute morons that went out and did that. So yes, I hope there are lifetime bans for those people. You do not belong on a racetrack.
Next bit of news.
Next bit of news I want to talk about is Rocket have launched a $140 million claim against Williams, which is for damages over their reputation. So in the year preceding COVID, where we had the lockdown...
19.
Yep. Rocket was the title sponsor for Williams, and then what happened was there was late payment and non-payment of what was their sponsorship contract based on Williams, and so they terminated the sponsorship, they terminated the livery, and that's where we ended up getting that sort of pale blue and white sort of looking livery. Well, I think we were in Australia when it was the actual red, white and blue livery. So that's why. So now all of that came out, and Williams won that, because their argument was that you have said you're a title sponsor, and then suddenly you're not paying us, or you haven't paid us, or you've shortchanged us. So they threw them out. So Rocket is currently looking at $149 million worth of damages to their reputation.
Because they were promised a competitive car. Apparently Williams said they're going to have a competitive car. I also would like to sue Williams for the last 3 years, because I've also thought they'd have a competitive car. I've lost my reputation on them as well.
That's exactly right.
I'd like to sue McLaren Because they said they were going to have a competitive car, and they weren't very competitive
What
in the
about
Ricardo
Ferrari?
days.
You've been up and about Ferrari.
I would like to
too.
sue Ferrari because they keep on promising me competitive cars since Kimi Raikkonen won a world championship there.
Yep.
So there's lots of money worth given to me because I've been made to look like an idiot.
I tell you what, we've always wanted to make money off this podcast, and maybe we literally have just
Rocket's
then.
shown us the way.
Rocket have shown. All right, the last bit of news I want to talk about, and this came out yesterday. Fans are jumping up and down, but hold your horses because I don't think there's going to be anything to jump up and down. So, Bernie Ecclestone made some comments in a recent interview about the 2008 Formula One world title, which
I'm very excited any time Bernie opens his mouth these days.
Absolute
when we first started this podcast,
Yep.
we were very much of the opinion it's time Bernie stopped saying things.
Yep.
Whereas now it's just a bit of fun, isn't it?
Yep. So for those people that don't know, 2008 is well known not only for the greatest finish to a title race ever, but it is for Crashgate in Singapore, where Nelson Piquet Jr. was told by Flavio Briatore and Renault to deliberately crash in order to help Fernando win, in which he did.
Yep.
As subsequent, punishment for that, Renault had a couple of year ban from the sport that was suspended, so they weren't actually banned. Flav was banned. Nelson Piquet lost his drive, and I think he was banned for life for driving as well. So, not a lot come out of it, and Alonso was found to have actually had absolutely no idea of what was going on. So, during that time, the rules around that was that there was possibility that you could cancel a race result if something untoward happened, like this.
Mm-hmm.
Also back then, the actual rule stipulated that, which we've been talking about, once a trophy is physically handed to a driver, that regardless of what happens after that, that result stays. And that was the actual laws and the rules and regulations of the FIA, which is a little bit different now because you can have a penalty after. But as soon as that driver had finished the podium and the trophy celebration, that's it. The result stands forever. So Bernie Ecclestone has come out in an interview saying that, yes, they knew shortly after as to what had happened and that the crash was deliberate, but in order to save face and for a scandal, they decided to do very little/nothing about it when they were well within their rights and all the rules in the FIA laws are on their side to go through and cancel that result. So, what that means is, now that Felipe is aware of that, he is looking into and beginning to look into legal action to have the 2008 result overturned. Which means that if he was successful and could do that, Lewis would no longer be the 2008 world champion because the result of Singapore would be cancelled, which means Lewis would not score his points and Felipe would not score his points. And I think that means that Felipe would have won by 6 points instead of losing by 1 point in Brazil.
Is this an April Fool's joke?
This is not an April Fool's joke. This is dead set. Now,
where are you reading this
from?
This
came out on Motorsport and Autosport last night, and it came out on racefans.net as well. Now, in saying that, it's really a case of the ICA and the FIA, for a roundabout way to saying it, they mark their own homework. And they judge themselves. So if we're looking at, 2021 and how that was sort of refereed, the FIA aren't going to come out and punish themselves. It's the same with this. So the actual, while Felipe is having a look at it, and a lot of fans yesterday have gone, hang on, this is huge because Lewis now could potentially be a 6-time world champion and Felipe is going to be what many people believe is the rightful 2008 champion.
Why?
Why do they? Well, just because of the way that it went down. They would have liked to do it, and he won in Brazil and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. And I don't think there's any.
No, he wasn't cheated out of it. It was just that. Yeah. But anyway, look, that's what's going on. But in saying that, I don't think Felipe is actually going to get that overturned because, as I said, the rules in 2008 at the time are actually applicable to 2008. So while some of those don't exist now, you can't then go and retrospectively apply a result to a race with a different set of laws and rules currently with the FIA. So, yeah. A space to watch to see what Felipe does, because at the moment he is looking into that. And that comes off the back of Bernie saying, yeah, we knew, but we were just deciding that we wanted to protect the sport from a scandal. Anyway, so no, not an April Fool's joke. Actual dead set. So
feels that way.
Watch this space, and I don't think Felipe. He's not looking for any monetary sort of gains out of that either. It's just it's like justice.
Yep.
It's that if you know that should have been cancelled, then I want you to actually go back and retrospectively actually not do anything about Brazil. It's actually Singapore, and he wants them to cancel Singapore.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll watch that with very, very keen eyes.
Very good.
Very good.
Well, what a weekend it's been. It's been huge. Absolutely marvellous. We've actually got a couple of weekends off. We've got a few ideas about what we're going to do.
Yes, we have.
Hopefully we might be able to catch up and start to sort out some F1.5.
F1.5, it's on the way. I need to get myself a new notebook this year.
Absolutely. Keep your eyes peeled for that one. I've got a few other ideas of bits and pieces I want to talk about in terms of Formula One world. But until then, we will talk to you again soon. Thank you to our major sponsors, All Signs, AUE Signs, and Dr. Auto Art. We are very thankful to our sponsors, and to the Tyson Hodges Trio for the music. We will talk to you again very shortly, but enjoy Fan Frenzy when that comes out later this week. Goodbye now.